want to start, Amber ended last night with the words that many beekeepers and bee people know are among the most famous words in poetry. The English version of Antonio Machado's Anoche cuando dormía, soñé, etc. Last night while I was asleep. And I teach English and Latin American studies up north, and I'm not too good with either language, so I always say to my students, pardon my bad Bronx accent in English, y me disculpan de mi mal acento pronunciado en español. So please do forgive me. The first lines of Machado, and very meaningful to the two of us, was at our wedding. Here's a little bit of Spanish. Anoche cuando dormía, soñé, bendita ilusión, que un colmena tenía dentro de mi corazón, y las doradas abejas iban laborando en él, con las amarguras viejas, blanca cera y dulce miel. Okay? Last night I dreamed, blessed illusion or marvelous one, that bees were in my heart, making honey and white combs out of my old failures. These words, of course, were spoken last night by our guest, Amber Rose, whom I have the honor of introducing to you again this morning. And for me, they symbolize really the reason that honeybees are so important to us. You know, in a way, as she said, they're God's little doctors, and in a way they do use our failures and our slips and our illnesses to build health for us and build well-being, you know, through our hearts. So those of you who met Amber last night, in a way you might feel, oh, you know, I've heard all about her, I've seen her, you know, I've heard all there is to know. But as Amber herself might say, here's what you don't know about me, and I don't know that she would say this herself. She is a person who, like the guy in Johnny Cash's old song, has been everywhere and done everything. Okay, number one, I want to say that she's worked with and studied with some of the greatest scholars in a variety of fields in this country and actually elsewhere too. But in the field of genocide, Holocaust studies, and human suffering, remedies for human suffering, three of her teachers were Dr. Bruno Bettelheim, Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and Dr. Hannah Arendt of The Origins of Totalitarianism. And Dr. Hannah Arendt gave Amber special honors in philosophical psychology in 1969 at the University of Chicago. In the field of acupuncture, she's been a certified acupuncturist since the mid-1980s. The field of acupuncture, she studied with Dr. J.R. Worsley, one of the greatest five-element acupuncturists, with Robert Duggan and with Diane Connolly. In the field of apitherapy, or bee venom therapy, or as she would say, bee acupuncture, her main mentor was Charles Mraz, the king of bee venom therapy, who really popularized it and established it in this country after being trained by people like Dr. Bodo Beck, who was a Hungarian immigrant who died in the 1940s. And Charlie Mraz lived until the end of the 1990s, you know, and Amber met him in 1993. And I would say he is the major imprint on her way of dealing with bees, except for Amber herself, you know, because very often the student surpasses the master. Okay, and I think in this case that was true. And then there is a whole other dimension of Amber. Amber has been a singer-songwriter who wrote hundreds of songs, literally hundreds of songs, many of which have been recorded. And her recordings came out of the era of the 70s and 80s in the great folk tradition of this country, popularized by people like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, and Joan Baez, and many, many other people. And she actually sang with Joan Baez and with Pete Seeger. And her most famous song at the time, written in 1972, was a song with a Spanish title and mixed bilingual words, and it was La Lucha Continuará, and it celebrated the life and martyrdom of a young girl who died, unfortunately, a few miles west of here on the shores of Lake Okeechobee at the hands of big agriculture, you might call it, one dark morning in 1972. So La Lucha Continuará was nominated for 2 Grammys in 2001. It didn't make it, but it made it into the songbooks, and it made it into the pamphlets of all the United Farm Workers and related union organizers all around the country. So she's got that, in addition to hundreds of other songs. And then, just to give you a very quick laundry list of the rest, I tried to do the math in my head. As you can see, I'm a mature guy, so I'm kind of losing some of the numbers. But she's the author of 4 books on healing, all of which last night and some this morning are still there, or 3 of them are still there. But she's also the author of books of poetry, of a number of lectures, and a number of articles in bee journals and elsewhere. She's the author of a 1-act play, which I've been privileged to act in along with her. The list is really, really long. And not to be blasphemous for those of you who are believers, but I was just this morning reading the end of the Gospel according to John, and he makes the following comment: if all the stories that were told everywhere about Jesus, were put into a book, there would not be room for it in that book or in all the books written in the history of the world. Okay, I won't go that far, but there is a wealth of wisdom produced by this woman over here. And where I fit into it, okay, where I fit into it is that some 60 plus years ago, when she and I were little kids and cousins, we met for maybe the second or third time on a beach on Long Island, and we were running together on that beach. And on that day, as a tiny little kid, I thought, this is going to be the story of the rest of my life. And I got derailed for a while, for about 45 years, okay? And at the end of that 45 years, and we were 58, I contacted her, and she was living in Florida, okay? And the rest of it is, it's not really history, but, it's biography. I told her that I'd always loved her, and, amazingly to me, she responded, and that's the good news. The bad news for you guys was, as a result, I managed to steal her from you temporarily and take her back north into the ice and snow, so I'm lending her back to you today, and I will conclude before handing you over to her, and if you haven't heard her before, what I would say is, you will be fascinated, you will be mesmerized, you will be transformed, as I have been. I will say this, that some people some years ago saw fit to give me some college degrees, an MA and a PhD. I always tell my students it's really a THD, Doctor of Thinkology, given me by the wizard, that kind of thing, instead of a brain, okay? But my favorite degree, and the one that I cherish most, is HAR, Husband of Amber Rose, okay? So I'm going to give her to you right now, or lend her to you right now. Here you go.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome and good morning, and I'm glad that you all showed up. And we have a long list of people who want to be demonstrations, they want to show up for the cause and show people how to get stung. Before we begin, I met a man at the beginning this morning. His name is Mike, and I don't see him here right now. Mike, oh, there you are. Would you mind coming up and telling your story and bringing your book with you? Sure. Okay. Mike is going to tell a special story. Last night I told a story about Al, who was sent home to die, and he had colon cancer, and he put his hand in the hive, and he's still alive, and it's been 10 years. So Mike is gonna, feel free to sit down. And I noticed that Mike had a copy of my book when I first walked in, and this is an original book from 1994. And probably on Amazon he could sell it for around $1,800 because it's out of print. So any of you who are lucky enough to get one of the BN balances, because I didn't have too many here, they were re-released in 2013, and maybe later I'll explain why I released them again. Okay, I'm going to give you to Mike.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for inviting me up here. It's a pleasure to meet you, finally. My name is Mike Zakis. I'm from Boynton Beach. I bought this book from my mom in 1998, so 18 years ago. And Amber was generous enough to dedicate it to my mom. I bought it because my mom she was recovering from cancer surgery. She had a cyst in the vertebrae of her neck. And the first surgery was only slightly successful. They weren't able to remove the cyst. The doctors were concerned that too much damage would happen to the spinal cord. And she went through radiation, but in 1998, the cancer returned. And my mom wasn't willing to go for another surgery or go for more radiation because it really was very stressful for her. So we decided to try Venom therapy. And she's still alive and kicking and doing great at the age of 74. So a lot of what we tried were protocols from the book, in addition to other things. And it's just, sometimes I forget how remarkable this story is. And over the years, I've seen similar remarkable things from Venom therapy. And I learned a lot from your book, and I hope to learn a lot more today, and thank you very much.
So you are an AP therapist yourself. You
Yes.
sting other people. So maybe you could tell us just a little bit about the kinds of ailments you work with.
Mm-hmm. Right. Even before I helped my mom, I was my first patient. And 20 years ago, I had psoriatic arthritis, which was very debilitating. And of all the people who have psoriasis, about 10% get the additional gift of psoriatic arthritis. I had it in my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, my hands. I was hospitalized. I was given gold salt injections and methotrexate and steroids and all kinds of horrible treatments. I got a little bit better. I still was not able to do simple things. I had difficulty going up and down stairs. I couldn't ride a bicycle. I couldn't crouch down like a catcher in baseball. So pretty much basic things that all of us can do. And so I found a beekeeper on my street. We had moved, and on my new street, there was a beekeeper, and I went to see if he could help me. And he said, "I'm not going to sting you. I'm not going to get involved. I don't really know anything about apitherapy, but come as often as you like, get a jar of bees, and knock yourself out." And I started in the spring. I was living in a place that's cold, so started in the spring when the bees start to come out. And by the time I finished 6 months later, in the fall, the psoriatic arthritis was in remission. So they say there's no cure for arthritis, and they can say whatever they want, but I don't have it anymore. And that was 20 years ago. And over the last 20 years, I've helped a lot of people, and I'm constantly amazed with some of the results that products of the hive have been able to do. We all know, like in the video, it's very good for a lot of chronic conditions, including arthritis and MS, a lot of the autoimmune diseases. One of the more remarkable things I've seen lately is the results on varicose veins. And that's not really a much publicized illness or condition or treatment for it, but I think as long as you do this, you always see things that are amazing, and that's one of the reasons why I stay involved in it.
It's pretty barnyard.
I guess they want to be stung. They came here.
All right,
They've got varicose veins.
let's hope it doesn't start up again.
Can we just turn it off?
Turn it off.
All these years? Yeah, turn it off.
The question was, do I still sting myself? I do sting myself, but not for the arthritis. I have what I call wandering pains. So every month it seems like a different part of my body hurts, and I think it's just from age. And sometimes it's sports-related injuries too. And before I go see a doctor, usually I try the bees, and I've been successful in treating things like tendinitis and other injuries, usually on my ankles or my knees. But sometimes, I work at a desk job, so a lot of times from the mouse or the keyboard, I get stiffness and tension in my shoulders. Before I go for a massage or do anything like that, I try the bees. Works like a charm. So yeah, I still sting myself. And of course, during my everyday or every weekend beekeeping, I'll get stings from time to time, and so that that happens too. Yeah. Thank you very much, Amber.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. That's a wonderful story. And I'm glad your mom is still alive. As soon as I saw the copy of his book, I knew it was the first edition.
Right.
Okay?
So this is almost like Antiques Roadshow. So I had no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
That book you could send somebody to college probably on that. I have a couple of students who bought one of my original editions when I was in acupuncture school, and they said, they sent me an email and said, your book is selling on Amazon used, for like $1,800 or something like that. I said, you've got to be kidding me. It's like, I'm not getting a penny of that. It's like, where is that money going? To somebody, I heard about a rumor, actually I saw a copy of the cover of the book, that somebody bought it at a yard sale. A beekeeper was going to a yard sale and he got the first edition of my book for $1. That was a real steal, But I have, in my lifetime, probably given away more books than I've actually sold, just only because it's hard for me if somebody really needs it to deprive them of the material. I will say that the reason I made a new edition in 2013, was because there's a man named Charlie, and not Charlie Mraz, but another Charlie, and I don't have his permission right now to mention his name, but so I'll just say there's a Charlie near Milwaukee, and he went to a beekeeping sort of research conference in Arizona, in Yuma, Arizona, with a woman named Dee Lusby. She's really quite well known. I don't know if some of you know her, but once a year she gives this workshop. And so Charlie started talking to her about bee sting therapy. And she said, well, you have to read Amber Rose's book. It's really the only book that's out there that combines the acupuncture points with bee venom therapy. And so Charlie went to all his friends, and they went on the internet, and they went to Amazon, and they looked it up, and it was $1,800. And so when he got back, actually I think what happened was Dee Lusby actually gave him her book, because she wasn't using it at that time, and she pretty much, absorbed, digested the information, so she gave it to him as a gift. But I didn't know that at the time. So I got a phone call, obviously from Milwaukee, somebody I didn't know, and I picked up the phone, and he said, is this Amber Rose? I said, yes. He said, did you write Be in Balance? I said, yes. And I said, why are you asking these questions? Why don't you just tell me what you need to know? He said, I thought you were dead. Now I said, well, why did you think I was dead? He said, because when we looked up your book on Amazon, it was so expensive. We figured you had to be dead. I mean, how could it be possible to have a book on Venom therapy that costs $1,800 where the person's still alive? It's because it was out of print. And so he convinced me to reprint it. And we don't have that many. We sold out basically. And this copy I have here on the desk because I wanted to read you a poem from it. But this copy is promised to somebody who's on my Facebook group named Lorraine. And so she's going to be here at noon and she's going to pick it up. She also loaned me this because I couldn't find my Tibetan bowl that I wanted to bring. But Lorraine was the one who reminded me this morning, if anybody has had coffee, that the vitamin C that they took, if they took it too close to the coffee, is just not going to work. So coffee negates supplements. It sort of depletes the goodness that's in any supplement. So last night, remember, we talked about not having alcohol before 24 hours before and after you stung. I mean, if it's an accidental sting, I mean, you can't help it. But if we're doing it on purpose, I won't sting anyone. And that's because Charlie Mraz told me that a man came to him for bursitis. And what Charlie didn't realize was the man was almost drunk, really. He was inebriated. He had way too much to drink, probably because he was self-medicating for his shoulder. And Charlie gave him some stings, and he didn't realize this. This was a long time ago, probably maybe 30, 40 years ago. And basically, he said it was the first time he almost used his EpiPen. And in 60 years, he never used an EpiPen. So in 23 years, I've never used one. Vitamin C is very important. And he made me promise that if somebody had been doing any drinking at all, it didn't matter how little or how much, that he made me promise that I would never sting somebody who had had alcohol. And that's why, that's one of my cardinal rules. So, like I said last night, I have 12 cardinal rules. Now, anybody who wasn't here last night, these are my notes, basically an outline, so you can pick it up. But, and we also have on the other table, we have the Venom protocol that I'm using now for Lyme disease, but it has all the cardinal rules in there, what you can and what you can't do. So, but it took somebody from my own group, somebody that I taught, to remind me when I was half asleep this morning that I actually forgot to tell you, you know, if you want to get stung, best not to have coffee too close to your vitamin C. I want to just mention something. Mike talked about having pains that migrate and move around. In Chinese medicine, we call, you know how wind will, you'll see some wind over there. I see some trees, some Tory pines over there that are blowing in the wind. But maybe on the other side of the street, there is no wind. So maybe in 20 minutes, the wind that's here is going to move to the other side of the street. Just like, you know, weather changes every 15 minutes. So when you have pain that migrates and moves around, we call it wind in the body. So somewhere along the way, Mike got some wind in his body. It can come from anything. It can come from a slap on the back. Somebody says, "Hi, how you doing?" It can come from a car accident. It can come from anything where you had the wind knocked out of you. But somehow, if wind gets into your body, you will then have pain that migrates and moves around. And There are 5 elements in Chinese nature. Basically, they look out at the world and their philosophy. There's the wood element, which would be the trees and the plants that you see all around you, or even if you have house plants, that's part of the wood element, or grass growing anywhere. I mean, we walked by grass as we, came here. All of that is part of the wood element. And what the meridians or the pathways that go with the wood element are the liver and the gallbladder. And people say, well, I had my gallbladder taken out, so that doesn't count for me. Well, you still have gallbladder pathway, and you have 2 of them, and there are 44 points on each pathway. So you still have that energy there, even if you don't have the organ. You have, there are basically 12 major meridians in the body in Chinese medicine. And each meridian, each organ theoretically has a pathway, that goes with it. Sort of like if you were on the highway to get here and there were exits to get off the highway to get to this location, or you turned left on the street, that would be the equivalent of an acupuncture point. So the points are like, exit ramps and entry ramps, or left turns or right turns on a pathway. So some pathways have 9 points, and other pathways are very long and have 44 points, or 67 points. So, depending on what's going on with you, but as soon as I hear somebody say something, Mike also mentioned something about varicose veins. Okay, varicose veins relate to the spleen. So, what we're doing right now is a little bit more advanced than what we did yesterday. Yesterday was sort of like the basics, the nitty-gritty of how bee venom therapy works. But a lot of people like to know, once you finish stinging where it hurts, or you've stung on the back for a couple of months, which is what I recommend for most people, unless you're a beekeeper and you were just stung yesterday, then I feel more comfortable, stinging other places. But basically, I try to figure out what pathways are struggling and what pathways are strong. And in the workbook that we have 2 books over there that kind of look like this, with the purple, background and the bee, okay? Pioneers, we're all pioneers, okay? We're all pioneers, we're going down a road where maybe nobody's gone before, maybe a few people have gone before and I've learned from them, and then I just add, extra little pieces. And I take anything that I consider a mistake or something that I've done that didn't seem to work very well, and I change it. I only make that mistake one time because, people's lives depend on it. So varicose veins relate to the spleen, and the spleen and the pancreas go together. And you could say maybe it relates to diabetes or hypoglycemia, something like that. But if you get the workbook, even though we don't have a lot of copies of Bee in Balance, which you can buy on Amazon, and it's very expensive, but the workbook is only $25, and almost everything you need about acupuncture is in the workbook. And if we run out, these are on Amazon too. Remember I mentioned that the lymph system goes with the spleen and varicose veins? So what may happen, if you're someone who tends to have varicose veins, that you're more likely than other people to have lymph nodes swell and things like that. But if you have a pathogen in your body and you're killing something with the bee venom, most people do get swelling in their lymph nodes and feel tired. That's part of what goes on with the spleen. If you're detoxing enough, so much, maybe too much, in one short period of time. And your lymph nodes can't handle all the die-off that might be there, or just all the byproducts, of the body breaking down the bee venom. It sort of clogs up the lymph nodes. And so that's a very common thing, that many of my patients have their lymph nodes swell, and a kind of tiredness where you just feel like, oh, I just can't move my arm. I just have to lie down. It's not like I've been I'm really like the Energizer Bunny and whoops, somebody pulled the plug. It's not that kind of tiredness. It's a kind of tiredness of heaviness. And that heavy feeling does go with the spleen. And so that would be an important thing to remember. But it's, if you end up getting the workbook, it's all in the book. It's actually in the first book too, a little bit. It talks about each of the 5 elements. So we have wood, we have fire, just like the elements you see outside, like fire would be the sun, wood would be like the plants. We have the earth that we live on, right? The earth element, it's a little bit like astrology. Then we have air or metal, and we have water, and then the extra one is wood. So that's, wood relates to when pains migrate and move around, when you're very irritable, when you're an artist or a dancer or a poet, when you're very creative. The flip side of that is, you can be very, very irritable. And there may be some people here that get stung on their liver today just for that reason. Maybe they even need to start a new chapter in their life. So there's certain points each point has a name, and the names are like poetry. It's like acupuncture poetry. It's like palace of weariness, gate of hope, chapter gate, starting a new chapter in your life. So it's really quite magical. But thank you, Al, for being willing to tell your story. But any time that you have blood vessels that prolapse, that where the blood is just really not being held very well, and you get varicose veins, spider veins, or a prolapse of an organ, you want to think about the spleen, and you want to sting on the spleen pathway. Now, of course, at the beginning, if you're somewhat of a beginner and you're not a beekeeper, you're not going to go to your arms and legs, hands and feet. As we talked about, we don't do the extremities early. But there are parts of the spleen pathway that are on the front of the body, the torso, so the trunk of the body. So you can either be stinging your back, or if you have, let's say I mentioned last night, cesarean scars, or scars, big scars from gallbladder or heart surgery, something like that, you definitely want to sting scars because they block energy. So I'm going to read a poem that's in my book. I've always loved this poem. I read it first when I was a little girl. I was born in January, and so the winter months mean a lot to me. And my parents were big fans of the Dodgers, and at that time they were in the Bronx, Brooklyn. And my father used to sneak into Ebbets Field and watch the Dodger games because he couldn't afford to pay. But I remember when my father had a stroke, and I went to visit him at a rehab, they had this poem on the wall. And I remember that when I was probably about 12 or so, I had a famous hero of mine was the catcher for the Dodgers. And it was named Roy Campanella. And I just loved him. I just thought he was the greatest. But what happened was he was in a car accident on a winter night, and his car skidded on ice, and he ended up in a wheelchair. So he wrote a book called It's Good to Be Alive, and he used this poem in his book. And many years later, I saw it in the rehab center, and that's probably where they sent him. So he probably saw this poem. It was on a bronze plaque. Prayer answered. Remember yesterday I talked about asking for a sign that the prayers were answered right in my own backyard with the honeybees? Prayer answered. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of all men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing I asked for, but I got everything I hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoiled prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. Now this poem, we don't know who wrote it, author unknown, but we know that he was a dying Confederate soldier. As he lay dying, he actually wrote that poem. Very powerful. So very often we ask for things that really, sometimes God just says no, or not now, or maybe, and other times we ask for things and we receive because it's the right time to receive. So, at this point, does anybody either have questions or who was here last night that had a question that never got answered? And if so, you'll probably have to come up to the mic because otherwise people won't hear you. Are you yawning or raising your hand? Okay, so come on up. So we have someone coming up.
What was the name of that poem, the title?
The title was Prayer Answered. Yes. Hello.
How you doing?
Good. March against Monsanto. Yay. Okay.
I left my glass.
Want to borrow mine?
Sure. One question I had that I remember. Does anybody? I've been exposed, and my girlfriend has been exposed to. I mean, especially me. I've been exposed to a lot of ticks when I visit my brother in Arkansas. Like we went a year ago, which is not the time I like to go. We had to go up there for family reasons, and I probably got 100 tick bites.
Hold on 1 second. Is
Can you hear me
his
okay?
voice going to come through my mic? Okay.
So, and we've been camping all our lives. So, I just wondered. I've heard the test. You haven't talked about how the test just goes on one particular Lyme variant or whatever. I forget the names.
Strains.
Strain, yeah. But do you ever treat for Lyme disease just because I probably am exposed and I don't have a lot of symptoms, but I do have back pain and do you ever treat that way?
Yes, I do treat that way, and right now I'm specializing in Lyme disease and co-infections. So any ticks that bite you, now it doesn't matter if they're deer ticks or dog ticks, you can even get Lyme from mosquitoes.
No CMs too, right? No CMs?
Yeah, no seams. Actually, it's controversial, but some people think it's an STD as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Some people feel that they were born with Lyme, that their parents had Lyme, or one of their parents had Lyme, and they developed congenital Lyme. And so I have a whole protocol. Did you get it last night?
Yes.
Okay, and that's for Lyme disease. And I would start doing that. And on the days that you're not stinging, because you sting 3 times a week, on the days you're not stinging, there's a whole detox protocol like Epsom salt baths. These are things that are old wives' tales, or things that our grandmother taught us to do. Things where you use binders like clay or activated charcoal on the off days when you're not stinging. You wouldn't want to take your vitamin C right before you do your charcoal or your clay, but you take Epsom salt baths, and it's all described in the protocol. But I would highly recommend it because many doctors believe that if you get a tick bite and you receive antibiotics, you get a bullseye rash, let's say. Some people don't. But if you get a bullseye rash, then a doctor will give you some diclofenac or some kind of antibiotic for a month, let's say, or a couple of weeks, and then they say, you're healed, right? You're, quote, cured. No, it doesn't really work that way with Lyme. It's almost like post-polio syndrome. If you've had polio as a child, it's like it stays with you. And it's either called post-Lyme syndrome or just chronic Lyme. And I'm glad that you only have just really back pain right now, because over time, Lyme just keeps getting worse. And it affects you on so many levels, cognitively, physically.
Does it do eyesight at all? Does it affect eyesight at all?
Absolutely. And there's a co-infection in particular called Bartonella, that if the tick was carrying Bartonella or Babesia or any of the other co-infections, you will get that. And all it takes is for a tick to be on you for several seconds for that saliva. It's not like I had a tick embedded in me for 3 days and it had to be cut out in an emergency room. I've healed myself from Lyme twice. And I know for sure now, because I just, some of the tests are not so good, but I had a very expensive test done and it came back normal. And I've had 2 tests done in the last year and they both were normal. So I have healed myself twice using Venom, vitamin C, and I was using stevia that I mentioned last night because it busts through the biofilms. And there's a particular stevia that they recommend, although a lot of people use stevia that you can get in packets. Like you were showing me last night, you were using stevia in a packet. That works. There's been some research by Dr. Eva Sappi, and she's in Connecticut, and she's using a particular kind of stevia that busts the biofilms because Lyme hides out in your joints, in your organs, in your eyes. Bartonella hides out near your hair. So any place where you have hair on your body, Bartonella loves to, grab up that hair and use it to make nests. So it would be, in a sense, you probably need it anyway, but you're not really that sick, so it doesn't seem like you have Lyme. But as a prophylactic measure, even if you don't have Lyme, it sounds like you're, if you're out, in the bee yards, you can get stung in a couple minutes. You can get bitten by a tick in a couple seconds, and with that saliva, that's why people are worried a lot about Zika. It's like it doesn't take much. It's a little bit of saliva goes a long way, and then you can be sick for the rest of your life. So the fact that you're a beekeeper, you know, is a plus because you've been getting stung. So that's maybe what kept some of this at bay. But if you wanted to, especially if you're having a hard time, you know, I would follow the Lyme protocol. But if you want to do it prophylactically, you could just do it. You don't have to do a whole lot of stings, but you know, and then you sting, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday on a regular basis, and you know, you would start on the back maybe for a month, and that's where you're having some of your problems anyway. Is it your low back or the mid back?
Yeah, mid-back and upper into the shoulder.
Okay, mid-back, upper, and in the shoulders. So I wouldn't go to the shoulders too early. I would just stay in the mid-back. And when was the last time you were stung?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. So if you've been stung within 7 days, you don't have to do a testing. So you could just start, you know, on a regular basis, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and consciously sting your back. You can actually sting where it hurts. And just start in the mid-back first, and then very slowly graduate up to your shoulders. I wouldn't do the neck too early. Although, have you had a lot of neck stings in the past?
I've stung it about 3 times right
Okay.
in here.
Okay, so he hasn't had a lot of neck stings. So what I didn't mention yesterday, but it's in the protocol, is the neck, the head, the lumbars, or the low back below the waist, and all the extremities, the arms and legs, hands and feet. I don't go to them early, especially with Lyme disease, because what happens if you're doing it on a regular basis, you're going to have what's called herxing, which is when you kill the Lyme spirochete, the melatonin and the bee venom kills the Lyme spirochete, and then you have a die-off process. So on your off days, on the days you're not stinging, you need to do a lot of detoxing. And part of that is described in the protocol. It's Epsom salts and having clay. Some people do coffee enemas and things like that. Anything that's considered detox. Something just occurred to me that there are some things that are contradicted with Lyme disease. And it is in the protocol, but I'm going to just say it out loud for people who are just watching on the tape that don't have the protocol, okay? You can always get it from me, and we'll make sure that you get my address, my email address and everything. Ozone therapy, IV ozone therapy, any kind of ozone therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, that kind of thing, is contraindicated for bee venom therapy as a medicine. I mean, if you needed it and you just happen to be a beekeeper, that's okay. But if you're using bees as medicine, you don't want to do any kind of ozone products because they do different things in the body, and so they negate each other. So oil of oregano, I know a lot of people are into essential oils, peppermint, lavender, you know, from different companies, but oil of oregano is contraindicated in bee venom therapy. So these are, you know, some of the rules that I talk about in the protocol and on my website. If you look on my website, lyme-beevenom.com, which is on my business card, you will see I have a whole list of the detox protocols, things you can take every day, like the vitamin C you take every day, but things like oil of oregano and ozone and lyme-beevenom.com. Turmeric is something that's also contraindicated. So a lot of people take turmeric, they use it, they make a drink with milk or something. Ginger's fine, but turmeric is an anti-inflammatory, and what we're trying to do with the bees is we're trying to create an inflammation in a sense so that the body can heal itself. So we're not looking to do we use liquid Benadryl if someone might be on the way to anaphylactic shock, and only children's liquid Benadryl because it has no alcohol. But in general, you do not want to do, if you do bee stings as medicine, you do not want to use Benadryl, because some people itch like crazy for the first month or so, and you don't want to put anything on it except Tiger Balm, ice, and there's something called kinesiology tape that you can get on Amazon or any sports store, and you put it right on the sting after you've stung, and what happens is it seems to reduce the itching. Now, I've never done it. I'm a big fan of ice packs, so if I'm really itching, I live with ice packs. They're my best friend. I wouldn't do it very close to when you've been stung. I would maybe wait 48 hours, because after 48 hours, that bee venom is out of your system. Okay, so bee venom only lasts in the system for 48 hours, and the vitamin C goes right through you. Yeah, you just pee it out. So if you're getting, a huge amount of IV vitamin C, that's not helpful for doing bee stings as a medicine, because, it's going to be out of your system within a few hours, and then you're going to have no vitamin C in your system. That's why we say 3,000 milligrams, 1,000 spread out 3 times during the day. So if we have some extra here, those people who signed up to get stung, they can also take a little extra vitamin C after they've been stung. Yes?
Are you familiar with arnica?
Arnica. Yes, arnica is something that you use when you have, right at the beginning when you have an injury. Okay? We just don't want to do anything to suppress the bee venom. So, and there's something else too that's very important that actually will harm you, not just suppress the bee venom, but it'll actually make things worse. And that's a cream that has cortisone in it. If you go to the drugstore and it says anti-itch, but there's cortisone in that cream, it'll make the sting burn. So you're going to have a sting that's burning you much more. You're going to be in agony. And I've known people who their itch was so bad for the first month that they just kept drinking Benadryl. They ended up going to the man that was on the video at the beginning, Floyd Alexander, and she got stung on her wrists at the beginning, and her hands just blew up. So, she learned very quickly that I'm not sure I want to get stung on my wrist again, even though that's where she had a lot of pain. But I remember her telling me she was leaning up against the wall in her house, and she was drinking Benadryl as if there was no tomorrow. I mean, the itch was so bad. And what she was doing was she just was negating all the bee venom, but she felt like she didn't have a choice. She couldn't handle it. So she had to keep doing that until she could handle it. And then she discovered Tiger Balm. And so Tiger Balm has no alcohol in it. We used to recommend Preparation H until we found out that it had some alcohol in it. But I remember when people were first coming to see me, I said, you need to buy some Preparation H in case there's itching. Where are you going to sting me, they said. No, not down there. It's just that you use Preparation H. You can use it, So I've had some people use a spray that was for sunburn and things like that, but they knew when they were doing it that they were actually negating some of the venom, but they just couldn't put their shoes on, and they had to do it. So you have to do what you have to do. But if you have a possibility, I've had fire ant bites, and they are in Florida at the mineral springs on the other coast. There's a mineral springs, south of Sarasota. And I was there twice, and I was putting suntan lotion on Barry's forehead because I was so concerned about him. I wasn't watching that my feet were in the grass. And I got all these summer fire ants, and I walked around in a makeup case, plastic makeup case that was filled with ice for 2 weeks. It was awful, but I used ice. Now, you'll see I have ice packs. When you're trying to sting somebody, you don't want to use real ice because it drips, and then the bees have a hard time stinging because your skin is wet. So I use an ice pack on the skin, and then I sting the person. You know, if someone's a beekeeper and they don't feel like they need ice, then we don't do ice. But I have a big container over here of ice, and I believe the ice packs are in here. And we have some bees with us that we got from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, wherever you are. And, oh, there you are. And so normally what I do is I have a refrigerator, and I calm the bees down by putting them in the refrigerator for 5 minutes. But we don't have a refrigerator in this room. So this is going to be an experiment. I'm going to use the ice. Now, do we have another chest that's just plain ice or no? No. So what we'll do is we'll make space here. You have an ice pack?
I have, I spray when I stay.
Oh yeah, I have 2 spray bottles too. But maybe,
Calm bees, very calm if you want to use it.
what is that?
I said I have calm bees, they're very calm.
Oh, you have bees. Oh, okay.
If you want, they're very
Oh, okay.
calm.
They're very calm. Okay, so maybe you can help us because Roxanne is one of your members, and she and I have been corresponding for about 3.5 years, and we've never met. And today was the day. So she can't stay all day, but we're all here, and we've all made sacrifices. And Roxanne is one of those people who's here, you know, who's suffering, who's struggling. And we all are. I mean, if one of us is struggling in this room, then we're all struggling. If someone is in pain, if someone has had a trauma, then we've all been traumatized. It's not just one person. It's like all the people in Hiroshima that we said a prayer for this morning. You know, they're all one, and we are those people, because we're a hive. Like I said last night, we're on a planet. Our planet is our hive, and we are the bees on that planet. And if one bee is struggling, then we all are. So, okay. Any other questions?
I was
Did
just,
you?
on the, if you're, like I'm eating like 5 or 8 mangoes a day, fresh grown mangoes, do you need as much vitamin C, or is that taken care of?
You need to supplement with vitamin C because we don't know for sure how much vitamin C is in mangoes. You know, I mean, in an orange is 85 milligrams. But you're a tall man, you're going to need more than maybe somebody like me who's 5 feet. You know, so to be safe, if you're going to do this as a medicine, you know, I have somewhere, and I think I might have said this last night, if I had $1 for every person who called me and said, I've been doing bee stings for 6 months and I've had no change. I have all the same symptoms, and nothing has changed. I say to them, how much vitamin C are you taking? Oh, well, I have some orange juice in the morning, or in your case, you have mangoes. I say, it's not enough. You have to make sure, and you have to do it every day, not just on the days you're stinging, but every day. And if you go away for a week, and you're in a place that doesn't have mangoes, you're not going to get any vitamin C unless you have orange juice, but it's just not enough. You have to keep that 3,000 milligrams in your system the entire time that you're doing it. And with Lyme disease, we're looking at 2 to 3 years as a process. It's a commitment. So.
And does it matter the type of vitamin C you take?
Some people say that ascorbic acid is not the best. Some people with Lyme have a lot of trouble tolerating vitamin C, so they use liposomal vitamin C. I use ester C. But today we have here emergency, so you can have some of that if you end up getting stung. But I would just say, ideally, you want to have vitamin C in your system for a couple of days before you get stung. But most of the people here are beekeepers, and you get stung all the time. So it's not like you've never been stung. But most of the people I work with are not beekeepers. So those people, you know, are not used to being stung. So beekeepers can get away with having vitamin C last night and having some this morning, you know, and we're gonna do some demonstrations for that.
Do you remove the stinger?
Okay, when you do a test sting, you remove the stinger immediately. Last night I mentioned 20 years ago, they left the stinger in the testing for 20 minutes, but I don't do that anymore. It's in and out, and you take a special kind of tweezers. I have tweezers to catch the bees, and then I have tweezers to pull out the stinger. And you slide the stinger along the skin, right? Like some of you use your fingernail or credit card or something like that. You just push it along the skin. You don't grab it and pull it straight up into the air because there are barbs on that stinger. It's not the end of the world if part of a stinger breaks off and is inside you. That's okay. It's just that, you know, you could get a little bit of pus, you could get an infection. But it's like a splinter. It'll work its way out. But I wouldn't go in there digging around to try to get it out. But the real key is if you pull it along the skin, then the barbs are just kind of going with the flow and they're not going against gravity, so to speak. So since the bees defy gravity, we have to make sure that their stinger is taken out properly. So, very good questions. Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else have questions? A lot of questions. Okay, you want to come up here? Because that way you can, people can hear your questions. Barry, can I have your watch? Because that way I can tell what time it is. So those people who had coffee this morning and they took vitamin C, you can go over there and get another packet and take some extra vitamin C if you plan on getting stung today. And we're going to do as many people as we can. So we have a long list of people, and there are going to be stories that go with each person, you know, and everybody's got a story about why they want to be stung here or there. Okay, what's your question?
Hi, my name is Valerie, and actually I have a laundry list of questions like most people in here, but I'm asking primarily about my husband, Bob, who has very severe tinnitus in both of his ears. It happened after he had leukemia, which he beat. We don't know if it was associated or not, but it's almost made him socially inept. I mean, external sounds are potentiated so much that he covers his ears, and I was wondering if there's any way I could assist him with that, because it's very painful to watch.
Okay, so what we're going to do, if you put your name down on the list, you did already, good. So I have a magic marker, and we'll mark you up a little bit.
So I can go home and do it for him?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, so you could then see, I could mark somebody else, and then you could see, but the problem is, then you can't take that person home with you.
Right.
So if I mark you up,
That's the one who everybody else comes to my house.
yeah, then you can look in the mirror,
Okay, yeah,
you know,
I'll
and
try that.
see, you know. But basically, I take the protocol home and say, did he have any radiation or chemo during the leukemia?
He had 1 week of IV around the clock in the hospital, and he responded very well. But we don't know if it's associated with that. It happened after that.
Yeah.
But he was never sick before that. He has this, and he's had a lot of joint issues ever since the chemo. And he now needs a shoulder replacement, so.
I see. So, you know, you might end up at some point stinging his shoulder as well. But chemo and radiation are very powerful medicines, and they're going to have side effects. You know, what I love about the bees is they really don't have side effects,
No.
except for the initial itching and, you know, swelling and redness. I mean, they don't leave permanent side effects.
No.
And that's the advantage of the
And you've
bees.
seen it work for that. You've seen it work.
Yes, I have. There are a lot of people in my group who have tinnitus, so yes.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. Okay,
I have a question. What is the benefit of eating the vitamin C? I was not here last night.
eating the vitamin C. You mean orally supplementing with the actual vitamin?
Yes.
Okay.
You're describing the 3,000 milligrams.
What is the, why do you eat the vitamin C?
Why do you
Why
have,
do we need to?
why do you need to take it? Those people who weren't here last night, you're gonna pick up a copy of this, and it's also in the protocol. So you're gonna pick up a copy of the protocol during lunchtime. The adrenal glands get stimulated when you're stung by a bee to make cortisol, right? That's one of the things that happens, to help you break down the bee venom, because it's a poison. And in order to make cortisol, or to regulate cortisol, the body needs vitamin C. It's a raw ingredient. So it would be like if you were making bread, or you were let's say you're making chocolate chip cookies, but you don't put the chocolate chips in. But in this case, you could go into anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock and hives, when somebody gets hives when they're stung by a bee, they actually end up, I had a beekeeper in Florida who was a newbie. He was brand new. He was just starting out. And he kept getting stung and he was getting hives. And I said, I want you to take some vitamin C. From that moment on, he never got another hive. And I don't mean beehives, I mean hives on the body. So you can get a systemic reaction where your scalp itches and your palms get red and itchy and that kind of thing, and you get hives all over your body. That doesn't mean you're allergic to the bees, to me, okay? I'm just speaking for myself, from my experience. It means you don't have enough vitamin C. So you're stung by a bee, the adrenal glands are trying to make cortisol, frantically trying to make this cortisol, and what ends up happening is you don't have the vitamin C to make the cortisol, and then eventually you go into anaphylactic shock because you don't have enough vitamin C. It's really, really simple. Or you drank some alcohol before. So the raw ingredient to make cortisol, one of them is vitamin C. Now, animals make their own vitamin C. So we were talking last night about dogs that were being stung for arthritis. They make their own vitamin C. I've stung horses, cats. They make their own vitamin C. So you don't have to supplement. And they don't respond to the placebo effect either. So animals are very different than humans. Humans have to actually take vitamin C as a supplement. And you have to take it every day. So, if you're a beekeeper and you haven't been taking vitamin C and you're doing okay, if that's, if you want to do, but I would recommend just having some vitamin C, because anybody can become allergic at any point, at any time. So you should always have your EpiPen with you. And if you have your children's liquid Benadryl, has no alcohol, and you develop hives, it'll stop it. Okay? Yes? I'm sorry. Oh, how much vitamin C? 3,000 milligrams. And the taller you are, the bigger you are, maybe perhaps more. If you're a very petite woman, you might be able to get away with 2,500, but for me, I don't chance it. I do 3,000 if I think I'm going to get stung on that day. Yes?
I have a question. I do a lot of removals myself, and I get stung just about everywhere.
Come on up here, because that way it'll be on the tape.
Anyway, my question is, I do a lot of removals, and I get stung just about everywhere. But I notice when I get stung in this area, I feel it more so than even if I get stung on the end of the nose. This one tends to, that one burns a lot more. Why is that one spot?
Well, there's a meridian there. There are acupuncture meridians there.
Okay.
Okay, and if I spent 3 hours with you and we talked about your whole life and your case history and your whole, who you are. If you get the workbook, you can circle where you struggle and where you're strong. But my guess is that one of those pathways that come up on the neck, you have an issue with. So I'm going to, this is like a little experiment here. I was going to do it with the whole group, but it seems appropriate now just to do it just for one person, okay? So I'm going to give you a choice of 5 things. If you could only have one of these 5 things, which is the most important to you?
Okay.
Number 1, unconditional love. Okay. 2, being understood. 3, being respected, appreciated, feeling special. 4, being reassured that everything's going to be okay. And 5, having a plan and a sense of direction. It's a,
You want them all?
Eric wants them all.
Just about all of them sound pretty good,
Okay.
but
Was there one of
a
them
good
that,
sense of direction, and the last one, you know.
the very
good
last
plan.
one,
Yeah.
sense of direction?
Okay, so that actually doesn't fit what I was going to do. But that's okay. A sense of direction and a plan is the wood element, which is the liver and the gallbladder. You have any issues in the liver and the gallbladder?
I don't think so.
Not that you know of.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you like sour foods?
Not particularly. I mean, I eat them, but
You don't like.
I don't
Would
crave
you say that you actually dislike them?
No.
Not
I
really.
mean, I eat the odd pickles and
Okay.
that type of thing. I don't.
I'm using you as a model. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
I
Is
got
everybody okay with me just kind of doing a little demonstration here? So, when I work with people, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the neck, okay?
Okay.
How's your relationship with your father?
It was okay. It was. I mean, he's passed away, but it was okay. It wasn't an outrageous relationship thing.
Was it horrible?
No, it wasn't horrible.
But it wasn't great.
It wasn't the best of what it could be, I guess.
Okay,
It wasn't what you needed.
No.
okay.
All right? So the pathway that goes with your relationship with your father is here. Okay? How about spicy foods?
I like them.
Do you like them a lot?
Not super hot, but I don't mind some heat.
Okay,
Because spicy foods go with that pathway that goes up the neck there. Okay? Do you ever remember your dreams?
Not often enough.
okay.
I mean, if I'm woke up in the middle of one, I'll remember it, but if I have others, no.
Okay,
What's your favorite season? I know Florida's like,
It's
pretty
hot.
much, it
I-
doesn't have the
I
same
don't-
seasons.
I don't
but
mind the cool, the fall or the spring when it's 50s, 60s.
so
It's-
you would
Say that fall is your favorite season?
Yeah.
Or it might be your favorite season? Okay, so fall goes with the neck. I'm just trying, you're gonna get this, it's all in this, this packet, so if we don't have enough, maybe somebody can, make copies and you can get them later. But there's a season that goes with every element, every pathway, every organ. There's a taste, like spicy foods, and in his case, father issues, the fall, spicy foods, they all go with a meridian that goes up the neck. That might be a reason.
is why that
It
burns
might be a
more so
reason that burns more than some of the other ones. Do you ever have things like sinus problems?
Yeah, I mean, this one here is actually clogged or plugged up. It doesn't, that, I can talk to you another thing about that, but it's got that, I woke up one morning and it was just ringing, and then ever since then, it hasn't really worked well. So,
How about your nose and your lungs?
none of my sinuses from time to time are, my lungs are fine, just
Okay.
my sinuses are
right.
not
So,
the best.
see,
The lung pathway comes over on the chest, and is on the arm. But the colon pathway exits right here at the edge of the nose. And so, that goes with that part of your neck that you're describing. So there is some energy there that, something's going on, and no blame, it's nobody's fault, it's just,
It is what it is.
sometimes it's, your weakness is also your greatest strength. So some of these things may seem like unpleasant or weakness or not something that, you're that happy about, but you probably have some of the metal element or air, the lungs and large intestine that are in the book. If you wanted to at some point over the lunch break, you could just look at let's say the lungs and large intestine, and then let us know if you feel like it's speaking to you,
Okay.
So, because there are questions in there, like the ones that I asked.
Okay.
And you answered enough of them correctly that I think that you might, possibly. Here's one, have you had a major loss in your life? Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Okay. Everybody knows about it.
yeah,
That's why your neck is burning,
yeah.
even more than the other things we just talked about. I actually had a man come up at a meeting. It was much bigger than this. It was in a big auditorium. Never met him before. He was from New York, but I was in Ohio. I was in Worcester, Ohio. Okay? And he had shoulder problems.
Glad I got to.
They have shoulder problems too. So the large intestine, the colon pathway, goes up the shoulder and up the neck. So he was a beekeeper and he'd been stung recently. So I was in front of probably about 1,000 people, and I did a couple of bee stings on his shoulder or upper arm, and then he, while the stingers were in, he raised his arm up and down, and it felt better. And so while the stingers were in 20 minutes, I said to him, have you had a major loss in your life? Because loss goes with the large intestine pathway, or the colon. And I could tell he was starting to tear up. And I decided I wasn't going any further, just like I'm not going to ask you what it is.
Right.
Okay? So, because not that it's not important, but because, my goal is not to get you up here and crying or something. So, my goal is to show that when I said that to him, did you have a major loss? He said yes. I said, about how long ago was it? He said, about 6 months. I said, how long has your shoulder been bothering you? He said, 6 months. So I knew there was a connection between the shoulder pain and this loss, because that's the pathway that goes there. When we were done, and when we came off the stage, my friends from New York said to me, how did you know? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he really had a major loss, but I didn't know what it was, because they didn't know how I knew. I knew because I know where the pathways are. And so I knew, what might be what was a possibility, because he could have just said no, and then I wouldn't be telling you this story. It turned out that his son was killed accidentally in a drive-by shooting in Miami 6 months prior. So that's an example. So that's probably your answer, is I don't know.
Well, yeah, my shoulder's been hurting for many years,
Yeah.
so.
Did you have another loss a longer time ago that were not the one you're just mentioning?
Well, I've lost my dad, but that was 15, actually longer than that. So it's probably around 15 years ago.
Right.
But I mean, my shoulder was injured doing some yard work, trimming, and ruined the rotator.
Oh, I see.
And I'm not gonna get surgery for it, because I don't wanna mess it up.
Yeah.
So I would do a lot of stings on your shoulder.
Right.
I mean, not say I would do them, but you can, you can
I get
do
lots of
over
stings,
time.
sometimes right
But,
there.
as I said, my mentor, Charlie Mraz, stung specifically on his knee, and he only did it once, but he did it in the worst place where it hurt the most. And for the next 60 years, he never did it again. So if you can find the worst place, I would focus on that. That would be something that, that you can do on your own. But the answer to your question is, I think it has a lot to do with loss.
Okay.
Yeah, would be my guess. But you can look through the book and look at the colon pathway during the lunch break and see what you think.
All right.
Yeah, and just let us know. Thank you so much. Okay, Al?
I have a question that goes right along with that. Will the bees sting him there because they are attracted to that spot because there's a problem there?
Yes, that's a fantastic question, and I have a really special story to tell you about that. I think the bees know where we need to be stung, because they're the doctor, and God is the doctor, and they're being directed someplace. That's a fabulous question and a great lead-in to the next story. There was a man in Baltimore, about 30 years ago, was in an explosion, and he was, he had maybe 15, 17 surgeries. I mean, he had third-degree burns all over his body. He almost died, and it was, work-related injury. And I mean, he was on painkillers for probably about 15 years. One day, he and his wife went to a church picnic in the Baltimore area, and he was stung by 2 bees on his upper arm. And he actually didn't have a burn there, but the bees stung him there. So it was like, they were the doctor, they knew exactly where to sting him. They stung him on his upper arm, 2 honeybees, because the stingers were left in, they weren't yellow jackets. And his arm began to swell a little bit, and he started feeling a little bit faint. But you have to remember, he was probably on painkillers. So it was kind of the venom was interacting, with some of the, the heavy-duty painkillers from his burns. So they went to the hospital. His wife drove him there, and they gave him a couple of Benadryl capsules, but he thought, it's not really that big of a deal. So he sneaked them in his pocket, and he didn't take them while he was in the hospital. He figured, I'll just take them when I get home if I feel like I'm getting worse, Probably within a couple days it'll just go down. Well, he woke up the next morning pain-free, and he's been pain-free for another 15 years. So that's an example. Thank you for the lead-in, because, I need a little help, because I haven't had coffee or anything, so I feel like I'm still half asleep, So I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do today, and I started to panic a little bit in the car. Oh my God, what am I going to do? But you're all helping me. You're all showing me the way. Just like, we're bee buddies, and we're showing each other the way to find our way home. And so I'm going to just take a look at the time just to see what time it is. So it's 12 o'clock. Now, is that an appropriate time to break for lunch, or should we? In 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so there's another question. Do you want to come up to the front? And so,
I can just ask you from here, if you can hear me. Can bee venom therapy be used for MRSA, or staph infection?
MRSA and staph infections.
Well, MRSA is a staph.
Yeah, my mother died of MRSA. Yeah.
My daughter had it really severe.
Yeah.
And I used Manuka honey and our honey from my hive, and within 24 hours it was almost gone. Within 48 hours there was absolutely no culture for the doctor to find.
Okay. Where?
But the reason I'm asking is it comes up every now and then, and so it's.
Come on up front, because I want the people who are listening to the tape to be able to hear you. So your daughter has had a staph infection.
Yes, she's had
That was MRSA.
Yes.
Okay.
And Manuka honey and our honey from our hive has been helpful. It's worked, along with monolauric acid internally. So Manuka honey topically and lauric acid internally. But I'm wondering, because it'll come up every now and then, she'll get a flare-up in the same exact spot. I'm wondering if there's a pathogen in her body, if we can get rid of it through bee venom therapy, and then where would I sting her?
And where is the MRSA?
It's in this area, on her chin.
On her chin?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it was covered, it was like a beard on her face, but when, the first time, it was because she was misdiagnosed. They told her that she had herpes, and she was in North Carolina. And when I saw the picture, I saw that herpes is on a nerve. It runs on a nerve. And so because it was covered, I knew it wasn't herpes. So she came home and we had to treat her. But anyway, when she does get a flare-up, it's in the same spot that it started.
Right. So that means there's some of the MRSA is still there.
Yes. And any allopathic doctor will tell you that for the rest of her life, it will be in her body. But I'm sure that we can get it out.
Right. Right. Well, bee stings are anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antifungal, antiparasitic, you know, so I mean, it's like, I've never seen bee venom fail for any ailment,
Right.
you know, so I don't know if she would be up for face stings, but what I would start with would be just, has she gotten any stings at all?
No, I mean, she has, but not just by being on this planet, but not from our hive. She doesn't go to the hive.
Okay, so if she were my patient, I would start on the back, because I always start on the back now. And the back, the reason I start there is that there's a lot of space for the venom to expand. So if you're going to swell, and since she hasn't had a lot of bee stings, and basically she's young and she's healthy, other than
Yeah, she's
this,
extremely healthy.
yeah, other than the staph infection, she's very healthy. So therefore, she's going to have a good immune system, and she's going to get really red, really swell, and it's going to really probably itch a lot. And so she might want to give up. She might not decide to continue. But, so I would start on the back with her for, you know, because actually in this case it's a pathogen, you know, that we're killing, so she may get some of that die off.
Okay.
So she might want to follow oh, actually it's not here, it's on the table there, but the Lyme protocol, because that's something where you're actually killing a pathogen, you know. In this case, you know, staph is hard to kill.
Yes.
I, right at this moment, have 7 antibiotic resistant staph infections in my sinuses.
Okay.
So I'm very aware of that, and I'm planning on working on that.
Right.
I just found that out fairly recently. So I know what it's like. You know, so if you do too many antibiotics, what happens is you become, that's immune, or your body's not responding to the antibiotic anymore. You know, it's like resistant to that antibiotic. So basically I start on the back and use the Lyme protocol, and eventually after you've done, you've crept up the neck and done some neck stings, then you can eventually, but you'll be doing test stings there,
Okay.
in and out.
Do I have to wait until there's a flare-up, or do I have to wait until she has a flare-up, or can I begin now?
You can begin now.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Thank you so
That
much.
was really interesting.
Thank you.
I've
Thank
never,
you. She's never had an allopathic, she's 24, and she's never had an allopathic antibiotic, so I think that's part of the reason the Manuka honey might have been as effective as it
Right.
was. Yeah. Or as rapidly effective.
in general, bacteria and nothing can really live in honey. But Manuka honey is especially more powerful.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it kills H. pylori in the stomach, you know,
Yes.
when you have it. But you can actually, have you used it on the skin directly?
No,
then?
we used on the skin directly.
Yeah.
Actually, it was, initially it was too strong, so I had to dilute it with our honey,
Okay.
and then slowly build up throughout the day until she could take it straight.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was too strong for her skin.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Right, okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. That was, I've never had that question before. So, yes.
What is Manuka honey?
Manuka honey comes mostly from New Zealand, so it's very expensive. And you need a Manuka plant. And the bees make honey from that plant, just like if bees are around clover, you know, there are different kinds of honey. So we have Tupelo honey, and we have clover honey. So Manuka honey is very expensive. At one point I was going to become a distributor, but then because I sting people for free, I didn't have the money, you know, to actually, you know, bring it into the country. But when I was in Toronto, I bought about maybe 15 jars of it, and a number of my patients were using it who had an MS. And they were having fantastic results just with that. But honey is good for bed sores and any kind of a cut that's not healing. You make honey bandages, but Manuka honey, I think, is the best honey in terms of an infection or something that's just not clearing up. You know, that's hanging on for dear life. It just doesn't want to give up. It's being very stubborn, and Lyme is like that. That's why Lyme disease is an epidemic in this country and elsewhere. I mean, the numbers that CDC gives you are not accurate at all. There are many more Lyme cases than 300,000 new cases a year. There are many more. And maybe we all have Lyme. Although I know I've just recently been tested, so I know I don't. And I run a group on Lyme disease, so that's why 2 of my books are specifically about Lyme disease. But if you're on Facebook, you can join my group and you can ask lots of questions. But Manuka honey is the best honey to use if you have an infection or if you have, let's say, an ulcer. It's just that generally speaking, when you eat something very often, your stomach acids will break it down and make it not usable, so it's almost like you didn't have it. But with Manuka honey, it works so fast that it kills the H. pylori in the stomach, which causes ulcers. Okay, we still need a little time before lunch. Okay, your question.
You mentioned doing it on the back. Any specific place on the back? Or
Yes.
anywhere?
Usually I sting about 1 inch away from the spine on either side. So not on the spine itself, although you can do the spine, but just like next to the spine, up and down. But I don't want you to go above the first thoracic vertebrae, which means I don't want you to do the neck. That big bump when you lean your head back and forth, there's a big bump there. That's the last cervical vertebrae, C7. So I don't want you to sting above there, or on there, or near there. I want you to sting from T1, a thoracic 1, down to the waist. And I don't want you to sting the lumbars unless you're sure you don't have Lyme. Because there are a lot of nests that Lyme and Bartonella co-infections make in the lumbars. And I know somebody who was told, not by me, by someone else, to sting their low back for a few months. And that's where she started to sting for Lyme, in her low back. And she lost the use of her legs, and she was in a wheelchair. And I've helped her come out of it now. But I'm sure she'll be watching this video at some point, and I'm not gonna mention her name, but she knows who she is, and everybody in my group knows who she is. So, that's why we sting between the waist and before we get to the neck for the first, anywhere. It depends on what the ailment is, but from 1 to 3 months. With Lyme disease, it's 3 months for sure. And if you get to the point where you're someone who's not used to getting stung and you have a lot of scars or it's still red, you can go out more than 1 inch. You can go 2 inches out or 3 inches out if you need to, But I wouldn't go like, for somebody, a brand new person who's never been stung, I wouldn't start with the shoulder. It's just too close to the neck. So, but unless you get accidentally stung on an arm, like that man with the burns, he got accidentally stung on his arm. So that's not where I would have stung him, but it's where he needed to be stung. Or maybe it was just systemic. Maybe the people who believe that it doesn't matter where you get stung, but I think in his case, he really needed it in that particular spot. So, thanks for that question. Yes? Can you speak up?
Could I see some hands of apotherapists in the area, because it's very difficult for me to take vacations and go away.
Okay, so Roxanne is an apitherapist in Jupiter?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike, are you still here? Okay, so Mike is an apitherapist. Are there any other people who sting people with bees in the room beside me? No, okay, so there are a few of you who could possibly, so maybe Roxanne needs to leave soon, so maybe you could give her your telephone number so you can connect. So if she goes on a vacation, she has all these patients, but the real key is, I ran a free clinic for 4 or 5 years, so, I was doing all the stinging, but a lot of those people it was a hassle to keep coming, and so they learned to sting themselves, or they had a parent or somebody, a friend, a husband or a wife or something, who would sting them. But if you don't have somebody to sting you, You know, you can learn to sting yourself. And some of my friends are actually working on an extension that you can put on a tweezer, where you can actually reach your back by having a tweezer that's so long, or there's something on it that you'll be able to sting your back. But many people are stinging themselves. You know, when I started off doing this 23 years ago, we were guessing at that time there were about 10,000 people with MS who were stinging themselves with bees. And that's how people started getting bees by mail, because they didn't have hives, or in the winter they couldn't open their hive. You know, I have a secret for that, which I can tell later, but for not opening the hive but still getting the bees out, okay, in the middle of a really cold winter in Maryland, because I didn't have a choice. But there's some people in California where you can get bees by mail. Some people now in South Carolina, used to be in Maryland. Greg Ferris and Michelle, his wife, and the Allens are in California. And there's a woman named Gayleen Carson, who's also in South Carolina. And they ship bees in a little queen box, and it has a screen on it. And it differs in price, but very often, at least with the Allens, it's about 10 cents a bee plus shipping.